Good morning, my friends. Happy Wednesday. Um, I always like to give you the date, the 13th, April the 13th. Um, oh my gosh, I just traveled home last night. I got home at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I'm like still trying to get enough caffeine in me, to function properly. Um, but I'm glad to be back in Tennessee. Although I will tell you right now, the weather is a little nutty. The flight I was on last night, we had to sort of make a different route and added about 35, 40 minutes to our trip. Kind of had to fly around all these thunderstorms, and um, got home and it was raining a little bit and 72 degrees. And so it's warm and, wet. I'm not used to that being from California. And in my soon to be garden, it's like it's like all the bugs are starting to come out. So it's like, what is that giant red wasp? And what is that big giant bumblebee looking thing? Like they're just hovering. If anybody has any words of advice about bugs, I'd love to know it because I'm so not acclimated. But it'll be my first summer in Tennessee, so we'll see how those things go. Anyway, I'm totally willing to take advice. Let me know that you're here. Say hi in the comments section. That would be so helpful to me. As always, I appreciate it very much when you do that, and I love the conversation that that ensues from that. So much appreciated. Um, our topic today, we talked about this. This was a topic not that long ago, talking about coaches, trying to find coaches and what's a good coach and how do you know, particularly if you're a beginner, but honestly, even if you're, an intermediate advanced person, who's looking for guidance and looking to refresh your perspective and things like that. So I'm sure these are things that you've heard before. Perhaps somewhere in here there are things that you've not heard before. Anyway, it goes. I hope that it's helpful. I am always here to ask questions of if you need. Of course, you know that. So anyway, let's get started. And of course, as I get started, down comes my dog to visit. So perhaps she'll come up. Come here. Come here. Sorry. Um, so maybe she won't interrupt. Let me see. Let me see who's here, my friends. Yvonne, good morning. Nice to see you. Nice to have you. Um, uh, I missed you. I feel like, did I miss you last week, Yvonne? I don't know. I've kind of lost my memory, so not really. I'm not putting that out there in the world. I haven't lost my memory. I'm just tired and I can't figure out which week is which. Um, anyway, hi, Beth. Listening while driving, right on. Multitasking, keeping your eyes on the road. Um, all right, so let's talk about coaching. Oh my goodness, it's such an interesting time. Again, when I started in this business, there was maybe like one coach. You know, there were a couple of people who did animation coaching, and then there just weren't that many coaches. And I was in Los Angeles, and so it was very localized, right? But now, now we've got coaches everywhere, and and it's become it's a cottage business, right? And so there are absolutely people who offer their coaching, and they do it because they love to coach and they love voiceover and they love voice actors, and they very much uh, want to keep the level of professionalism and the level of skill high, because when it's high, we all benefit, and it becomes more and more apparent every time that we have value and that we bring something of value to the table, right? So that to me is such a primary um, it's a primary goodness, right, about voiceover coaching. And it should be in your mind, right, as you interview coaches, and you should interview coaches. Um, then there are many coaches who, are just, I hate to say it because it sounds so negative, but there are a lot of coaches who, for them it's a side hustle to make more money. And you know, believe me, I am a capitalist and an entrepreneur myself, and I understand the need to make money. I do, and yet it isn't. It has to be, you know, in conjunction with what my particular gifts are, you know, in order to coach, right? Like I could make money in real estate if I wanted to. I don't want to do real estate. I'm not interested in real estate. I could, there are all kinds of side hustles. I could sell counter beauty. I don't want to. I want to use the products, but um, I don't want to. I don't want to sell them. And so, it's just an interesting thing that we have to keep in mind, and it's the thing we have to watch out for, and the thing that we have to discern. The intentions and the motives of the people that we're approaching in order to coach. And honest to God, that's the hardest part. And sometimes we learn through trial and error. We sign up with a coach because we heard they were a good coach, or because this colleague said they were a good coach, or and we try, and we learn as we go. So I want to say this: probably the best thing that you can do is have a consultation, and consultations, in my opinion, should be complimentary. Um, because there are so many coaches out there. We can't afford to pay $250 to meet someone, meet five coaches, that you perhaps don't feel like it's right. It's like, what, are you going to spend $1,000 to do that? I don't think so. So it's really important that you seek people out and ask if you can have a consultation. Now, that consultation may be 15 minutes, it may be 10 minutes, right? And that's where your sleuthing, kind of has to come in, right? They may be short, but nonetheless, they're important. Um, and and you want to ask, some things. You want to ask what their specialty is. Are there things that they don't coach? Like if you come to me and you say, I'm really interested in animation, I'm going to go, I'm not your girl. I don't teach animation. And in fact, even if you want general, um, commercial voiceover, I'm not your girl. I don't teach those workshops anymore, right? And so find out what their specialty is and make sure that it aligns with what you want and need at the time and what you're looking for, right? Um, if they're primarily a commercial coach, but say, yeah, yeah, I can do, I can do video game, right? That's a bit of a red flag, right? Because video game technique is very different than commercial technique. Are there common threads in there? Of course, right? We have to talk about mic technique and all of that, which is different for all genres, and there's always a measure of acting everywhere, but acting techniques are applied differently for every genre that we're doing. And so just because somebody's a good commercial coach doesn't make them a good animation coach or video game coach or narration coach, right? Like I hate to use my example in all these, but I'm all I've got, right? So like I do narration, right? And I would say that it's actually something I feel like I'm very good at, right? I don't do as much of it as I would like, and I don't teach it because I haven't developed a plan, an approach to how to read narration. I do it, and I do it instinctively, and I've done it for a long time, but I haven't figured out kind of a game plan of how I would share that and do that with another voice actor. So I don't teach it, right? So you're also looking for a measure of humility in your coach. Like can they discern and tell you honestly what they teach well and what they don't teach well, right? And be honest about that. You need to ask them about their cancellation policies, right? Um, some people have very strict cancellation policies because it is the only way that they earn money. And so if you cancel last minute, they've lost money, right? They've lost income, for that particular hour that they can't fill, right? Which is often why people, say I have a 24 or a 48-hour cancellation policy, because they know that in that time it's possible to rebook that and, keep their earnings, right? It's to me it's reasonable, right? At the same time, how forgiving are they, right? I mean, we're voice actors. Things come up late, you know, um, and sometimes we don't, and most times we don't have control over that. Especially if you do last minute work. If you do affiliate work, or you read for a radio station, or you do commercial or political work that's just like, man, that stuff comes in and you have to do it right then. So how forgiving are they? And you have to determine for yourself, the level of forgiveness that you need, in terms of, when you cancel, right? And of course, coaches have to protect from those people who sort of cancel because, oops, they forgot, or, oh, oops, didn't put it on my calendar, and, oh, you know what? Like, when I was in my 20s, I studied with a singing coach, and there were several times where I worked as a waitress, and I frankly, I wasn't very responsible. And there were times when I was just like, oh my God, I forgot. And she's like, you can't forget. And I am charging you for this lesson. And it was like, and I didn't like it, because I was waiting tables and I didn't make very much money. But it was like, I learned my lesson. It's like, you can't just not show up, right? And that is why coaches have cancellation policies, right? Nonetheless, you have to figure out for yourself what's acceptable to you. Because if somebody says a 48-hour cancellation policy, I wouldn't coach with that person. 48 hours is a lifetime to figure out whether you can audition and book something inside of 24 hours. So a 48-hour cancellation fee, not reasonable to me in the realm of voiceover, right? It's not reasonable. Um, I don't have cancellation fees. And I know I could be wrong. I don't want to speak out of turn here. I think it's the same with Tom Pinto. Like, again, I could be wrong, and I shouldn't even talk about his coaching policies because I don't know them. Um, I just know that when I mentioned my coaching policies and not having, cancellation policies, he was like, yeah, that's right. So I'm making assumptions there, and I shouldn't. So my apologies, Tom. Um, anyway, I don't, because, not because I have a halo on my head, but because I have last minute work sometimes, and I have to cancel sometimes. And so why shouldn't I offer the same thing to my student? And for me, I don't care, and because I'm a mom and I know what it's like, to have life creep up on you. And it doesn't just happen to people who are moms, it happens to everyone. Life creeps up, and we miss things, and we forget, and we get sick, or we get, whatever. And so I don't have that. You call me straight up at the time we're supposed to meet, and you go, oh my God, I can't meet. I will say, rebook it. Like, it's fine. Right? So there's a whole range in there, of what coaches are willing to do. But you have to decide what you're willing, to do, what cancellation policy you are willing to uh, deal with, right? Um, I want to say, again, repeat that you want to pick coaches who are specialists, right? That really know what area they coach, and they coach it well, okay? Um, I again, I know you know this, but I'm saying it. There are people who disagree with me, and all of which is good. I would stay away from demo mills for your coaching. Don't go to a place where you have to coach with them in order to get your demo. And certainly don't go anywhere where it's a big one package fee, right? If you go through all my courses, you get a demo at the end. Not a fan, right? Not a fan um, of coaches who promise you a demo when you're done. You're not ready for a demo. you know, um, if you are at the beginning stage. I don't care. Like, you're not, right? That's just true. And the reason that it's true is because demos serve a particular purpose in voiceover. And largely, they serve to attract an agent. And you would be at kind of the top of your game. It That's kind of an exaggeration. You would be working and have pieces that you've done. You would have had experience, right? And you would be ready to seek out an agent, right? I think people get this sort of, they think there's a fast track to a voiceover career. And it's like, well, if I take 8 weeks of coaching and then I get a demo from the 8-week coaching, then I can go look for an agent and I'll be ready to do voiceover. And it isn't linear like that. It's just not. There's so much to do before you're ready to seek an agent, which means there's so much to do before you do a demo, which means you should stay away from coaches who say, take 8 weeks with me and we'll provide you a demo. That demo isn't going to serve you well. It's not. So, I am a fan of coaching with a lot of different coaches because you want to stay away from places that teach you a method and say that theirs is the only approach or that there's only one method of doing, right? And again, seeking out coaches it's sleuthing and it takes time, right? And it takes effort and energy on your part to really find a good coach, one who has your best interest at heart, all of that. A really great way to get to know coaches is to see if they offer one-night workshops, right? Or just book one session with them, one session after you've had a consultation, right? And if you go, that consultation, that felt pretty good. So maybe I'll just book one. Just book one. So you don't lock yourself into a package of 4 or 6 and end up at, week 2 or week 3 going, whoa, this is not what I expected. And you know what? This person doesn't like me. Or, you know what? I don't like this person and it's not working. And right. And then you're locked in and it's painful. Right. So, so take it gradually and be a sleuth. Right. And don't lock yourself into big packages. Right. If you're really beginning, you can look into memberships or schools, if you will. But again, it's that whole notion of what do you get at the end? And if it's sort of like you'll get a demo at the end if you spend 2 years at my school, it's like I just tend to shy away from those things, which isn't to say that there aren't good places to go and take coursework. I think Voice One in San Francisco is a pretty good example of that, although I'm not sure what their whole demo policy is. But I do know that they offer courses. They offer beginning, intermediate, right? And it's a step, right? Voice Track San Francisco, although I think they have, I think you can take stuff, but they also have like a curriculum that's 2 years long, and then there's an assessment sort of whether you're ready to make a demo. I'm not exactly sure about that. But again, sleuth, right? But the one night workshop thing taught by casting directors, or guest agents, but then you're just getting to know the agent, and that's a tease because you're like, oh, I want to be with that agent, and oh, I need a demo now, and maybe you're not ready for that, right? But I do think if you can take one class, right, to determine if that person is right for you. In your sleuthing, right, and in your in sort of using your discernment to figure out whether or not a person is right for you, you have to remember, and this is hard. I know it's hard. I'm I'm a person who's sort of lives in that space of like, oh, I hope they like me, and so I'm sort of looking to impress them, right? And like, will you take me? As if it's a thing of like, am I worthy or not? It's a test of whether I'm worthy to study with a particular coach. And it really needs to be the opposite. Like, you need to be the person saying, are you good for me? Right? Are you are you what I'm looking for? Are you what I'm after? Do you teach what I want in a do I feel like I connect with you and like you can be sensitive and I can bring myself honestly to you as a voice actor? Do I have to impress you? I don't I hope I don't have to impress you except by my willingness to learn, right? That's what matters, right? So, let's see. Um, you want to make sure that fees are competitive, and of course that's a difficult thing to discern um, unless you've asked, you know. So that's a piece of your interview too. Like, what do you charge, and do you have a discount for buying a package, and do you have a refund policy if we start a package and it's not working out? And does it matter for whom it isn't working out, right? Um, so, so then where do we find these people, right? Where do we find coaches? Well, I think you have to be willing to ask your peers, but you have to ask people who are working and who have coached, right? Not just, well, I heard this person was good, because there are a lot of really great, there are a lot of uh, mediocre coaches with really great marketing, right? So don't be tempted by fancy schmancy marketing either, right? We want to get to the nuts and bolts of things, and so you want to talk to people who've coached and who have, you know, and who have benefited from the coaching. Ask around. More expensive does not necessarily mean better, right? The most shiny advertising does not make a good coach, right? And these are all the things that we're tempted by. For God's sake, we're in the advertising business. We know about this. That's what we're doing. We're like putting polish on corporations and businesses. That's what we do. And so we need to recognize it ourselves in this business, that's what voiceover coaches do, me included. I try to put out stuff that looks good and is attractive and makes you trust me, of course, right? But then you know if that attracts you, then you have to go in with your questions, like about what you do, how you do it, what are your policies, right? All of that stuff. So ask around, um, but don't ask just anyone. And if you find a coach that you really like, ask them to be painstakingly honest with you about other coaches, right? Who teach in different genres and things like that. I have a very short list of people I send others to, and most of you haven't heard of them before. I tend to try to find the people who are like, I quietly do this. This is my area of expertise. I'm not really into advertising and all that. And there isn't any gimmick, and there isn't, all of that. Um, so looking around requires sleuthing. And you can't just trust because of a pretty ad or because they have 10,000 likes. Uh, you know, um, it's really personal coaching, finding a coach. And so you have to ask around, and you can even ask people that perhaps you don't even know, but that you see their success and you say, I see you, I've heard your work, I think you're fantastic, I'm wondering if you've studied with someone who was beneficial to you, right? Like, I know when people call me about that stuff, like, I'm so happy to share that information. I really am. I'm flattered, first of all, that anybody would sort of say, I heard your work and I'd like to know who you studied with. Like, that's so complimentary, and I want to help, right? So I think that's another way. I think there are, demos are a whole nother topic, right? And we'll revisit that again because we did it once. But let's see. Also, with regard to coaching, another really great way to get to know whether or not you want to study long term with a coach is to take a group workshop, right? To participate in a group workshop, because you will have a variety of people with whom you are taking the class. And all of those people will be different, and they'll be idiosyncratic, and some will be really on top of it and really like perfectionistic, and other people will be sloppy and inattentive and don't know where they are, and they get lost and they come late. And you get to see how the coach reacts to all of those things, right? To find out who the coach is. Not just to find your place in the world of voiceover, which is another reason I suggest people take group workshops, to kind of get a sense of yourself in the biz. It's like, where do I stand? Am I any good? Like, so with these 10 people, how do I fit in, right? Which is great. But it's also an opportunity to see who the coach is and how they react to all different sorts of people. So that's a big suggestion. All right, I'm gonna take a look and see if we've got any comments here. Um, hey, Heather. Heather. Fantastic. Great. Um, Yvonne, off to a coaching session now. Great. Okay, so no questions. All right, so this is good. Let's see if there's any other piece that I want to share with you. I guess I want to say, at the very end of this is the importance of how a coach treats you. Do they treat you with respect? I because of the manner in which I coach, and because I mostly focus on kind of career coaching and encouragement coaching, I get people who come to me who are kind of burned out and who are like, I can't figure out what I'm doing and where to go, and this coaching thing didn't work. Or they come to me hurt, in a state of hurt because they weren't treated well by a particular coach, which breaks my heart, because there's no reason for any coach to not treat you well and to treat you with respect, to treat you like the human being, the unique individual human being that you are. And so that's just something that is really important, because coaching, you're in a relationship with a coach. And so you don't want to be in an abusive relationship with a coach. You want to be treated well and with respect. And you need to bring the same level of treating the coach well and treating the coach with respect. But I guess my point is, it's mutual. It's mutual. Something required of them too, in terms of how they treat you. I want to just share a little story. I got somebody last year who I'd never met before. Booked. I don't have these on uh, my coaching page anymore, but I used to have. You could get a package of 6. I don't have them anymore. But he booked a package of 6, which at the time was $800. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. But he booked an entire 6 package without ever having met me, nor I him. And it was like, wow. And so on our first coaching session, I got to know him, and and there were several things that were just like red flags to me about, like, I'm not for him, right? I teach this very narrow thing, and he really needed commercial training, like overarching commercial training, so that he could understand the foundational thing that he was about to embark in, right? Or that he'd actually been trying to do for a couple of years, because he bought all his equipment first, and it was sort of like he was doing things backward, And so at the end of the thing, I said, I'm not the person for you, and I'm happy to refer you to someone or give you some suggestions about where you should begin, but not with me. And I said, I'm going to refund all your money, because I'm not for you, and not because you're not good enough. Nothing to do with that. It's a matter of, like, where are you in your journey, of voiceover? And he was at the dead beginning, and so it's just so important that you get a sense that the coach cares about you, right? And cares about where you are, and isn't just like, oh, okay, I'll coach with you. I don't normally do that, but sure, I'll coach with you, right? Like that. not necessarily a great sign, you know? So I've talked longer than I usually do, my God. And I know this was a lot of like what not to do and who not to coach with, but I hope that it gives you just a sense that you have agency here. You need to know your value and your worth when you step in to interview a coach, and that is what you are doing. And so, to sum it up, get a consultation. Ask the questions. What are your policies? What's your cancellation policy? What happens if I buy a package and we realize, oh wow, this isn't working out? Like, what is there anything there to be remedied? And perhaps not. And I make no judgments about it. You're just inquiring about what their policies are, and then you get to choose whether or not you want to participate with those policies, right? Look into memberships or schools, group classes, group workshop. You will learn so much about a coach in a group workshop. So, staying away from method places, right? That teach you like this is how you do voiceover, and there's no other way, right? You just want to steer clear of those, and you want to stay away from classes that you get a demo at the end, right? So that kind of sums it up. As always, DM me with questions. Contact me where you can, and I'm here for you. All right. I hope you have a great Wednesday and a great remainder of your week. And we will chat next week with equipment. I'm going to talk about travel gear next week. I guess when I put up in my Two for Tuesday, I talked about a piece of equipment I love. I got so many emails saying, "What else do you use to travel with? Can you talk about a travel rig? What makes a good travel like this?" So we're gonna bump that subject up a little bit. We're gonna talk about it next week about what to have in your travel bag if you wanna go away and still be available to work. All right, love y'all, and talk to you next week. Ciao.